I'm thrilled to be here. As Kim said, I'm Newman. I'm the Director of Art and Education at metaLAB. I work closely with Jeffrey and Kim, and in this case, Laszlo for this wonderful symposium. And thank you all for being here, and a special thanks to Laszlo and his team for organizing this and pulling it all off. If the PechaKucha presenters could now come up, what we're going to do is have you all sit here and then just come up to the podium when you're speaking. So I'm going to introduce you and come on up. Gibrann, Morgado, Sarah Trew, Levin Brinkman, and Rebecca Xu. And then I'll introduce you before each of you presents. So for those of you who don't know or aren't familiar with the PechaKucha format, it was conceived in 2003 as a chit-chat style by Japanese artists. And the idea is to have quick, pre-timed slides to present interesting, provocative ideas. And we are going to start with Gibrann Morgado, who's going to be presenting Seeing with Light, Interpreting Earth Through Spectral Data. And for those of you who are seated, your mics are on, so just, don't speak into them while other people are speaking. And after we go through these great, quick presentations, we will be having a break, I believe. So thank you for your patience and for sitting here with us a little bit longer to hear from some terrific data artists. Without further ado, Gibrann.
So, thank you again. My name is Gibrann Morgado. I'm an artist and full-stack developer from Mexico City. And today I will tell you a very brief story about how I got to work with satellite data. Originally, I've been a general-purpose software developer, but I had an unexpected request by a network of NGOs, an environmental group of NGOs that wanted me to build a system for monitoring large-scale watersheds and the coral reef in the Mexican Caribbean. And the reason to work with data was only possible doing remote sensing techniques for monitoring this type of problem because of the scale. And when we think about satellite images, we often think about RGB images, but they are quite more complex. They can cover a wider range of the spectrum, from infrared even to thermal. And this will be important for the next parts of the presentation because every single matter or material on Earth has its own signature. We call this spectral signature, and it's the way they behave in the presence of sunlight. So algae, soil, even plastics on the sea reflected in a very different way. And I was very distracted for my initial endeavor building this system because of the beauty and the complexity of the systems, of the ecosystems and the reef. And I started exploring natural color, which, by the way, is a kind of anthropocentric view of color because it's known that other species can perceive infrared or other parts of the spectrum. But I was witnessing the deltas, the formations, and the forces that shape these ecosystems, and even seeing almost in real time the tragedy of climate change and the consequences of human intervention in these ecosystems. But suddenly it was not enough just working with natural color. So I started to work and experiment leveraging these spectral bands to perform operations to make visible what is invisible to the human eye, which is basically scripting and playing with the bands to see phenomena like the trophic state of water, measuring the phytoplankton concentration, the oxygen in water, the nitrogen. So suddenly it was like painting, or in between painting and this, between discovering and creating. It was like a strange thing happening there. And I was able to also make several study cases like this in Venice for measuring the turbidity near the mangroves and the sea near the populated areas around Venice. And working with water, it's quite different than measuring the properties on land. In this case, I was working with turbidity in Holbox, Mexico, and it was pretty clear how the tourism and the human productivity can affect the ecosystem. Like in Chapala, Mexico, I was able to measure the nitrogen concentrations, and we spotted the largest oil spill ever recorded in Mexico. This later appeared in mainstream media, and among other cases. Change is fundamental to understand this problem, given this is not a static problem. I was able to also make a study case for Salton Sea, California, measuring the loss of oxygen in the lake and the Cozamala system in Mexico, which basically is the system that sustains life in the city. And last year, Mexico, as California, was hit by wildfires, and I created this prototype to classify the burned areas from the current or active fires. And I worked with municipalities to use this tool. And I'm glad I was finally able to build a fully functional software to concentrate all of this knowledge. I'm glad the foundations of this software were built in the pre-ChatGPT era. and yeah, it's working right now. If you want to know more about this, feel free to reach out and during the event or later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gibrann. And I didn't mention, but the slides auto-advance, which makes this challenging and also wonderful to hear from all of these folks. Each presentation is 6 minutes and 40 seconds. Next, we have actually Sarah. We have Sarah Trew next, who will be speaking on reimagining the still life, digital florals in the age of data. Thank you, Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Trew. I'm a curatorial assistant at the Indianapolis Museum of Art, working in contemporary art, specifically new media. And today I wanted to share some ideas from a recent exhibition proposal that explores how contemporary artists are using digital tools to reimagine the still life. So we often think of the Dutch masters when we think of floral still lives, right? So Withus, Rachel Ruysch, Van Elst. These impossibly lush bouquets symbolize wealth, empire, and impermanence. They never existed in real life, but they continue to shape how we see flowers in art. So floral still lives, as we all know, have been with us for a very long time. So more recently, think Matisse, Van Gogh, and even in the middle here, Mapplethorpe's lit tulips. They are formally beautiful, but they're charged with meaning and are containers of emotion, cultural reference, and impermanence. It's not just flat objects either. We also have more contemporary examples of 3D art, like Rei Kawakubo's wearable bouquets, Anthony Sonnenberg's eerie fired blooms, Rebecca Louise Law's immersive installations, and even Christo's wrapped roses. But I have found that artists working with emerging technology and data curation best reflect the Dutch tradition. Flowers in art, not a new concept, but as I was reading Wahina Vowry's newest book, Searches, on the cover I found this quote that pretty much encapsulates what I was thinking of, and I thought it was quite fortuitous that that was created with ChatGPT in collaboration with the cover designer. The first artist I wanted to talk about is Alexandra Daisy Ginsberg and her Pollinator Pathmaker series. And this piece asks, what if the garden were designed for pollinators and not for people? Ginsberg uses AI to generate gardens that shift our view to the view of the pollinator. So like with her 4 Epochs of Paradise, she shows this digital garden at a huge scale. So this piece is over 50 feet tall, and it positions you at the scale of the insect. So you're really trying to see what their life is like. Now, Rob and Nick Carter were compelled to create their transforming series by data that states that people only look at paintings for a few seconds in museums and galleries. This animated painting subtly changes over time, and the digital animation mimics the shifting light of day to encourage you to spend more time with the work. For Sunflowers, they recreated Van Gogh's famous piece. And this piece is digitally modeled, 3D printed, and then cast in bronze. It's sort of a full circle reimagining, I think, from brushstroke to pixel to physical object. Andrea Brewster uses Midjourney for her Enchanted Gardens and creates these hazy, abstract floral images. These works are dreamy and they blur the known and unknown, evoking beauty and decay. They feel to me like a floral still life, but from the ocean. They're kind of coral reef, right? Daniel Brown's blooms never repeat in his On Growth and Form series. His algorithm simulates floral variation using institutional collection data that informs floral shapes, colors, textures, and things like that. They're forever repeating and are new every time. The generated pieces from Phenomena Labs refresh endlessly. They have nods to Hallmark Rococo elements, and the works pulse and bloom through live algorithms. With each refresh of a website, a new bouquet is created and signals the ephemerality of beauty. Jennifer Steinkamp is known for her animations that replace static florals with motion. In Florite, her flowers drift on invisible currents, forever fragmenting and reforming. They are never fixed and always shifting. This ebb and flow evokes a tension between peace and chaos, even at the small scale projected here. In Bouquet, generative animation gives rise to an eternally looping bloom cycle. The result is a lush and disorienting digital forest masquerading as a floral still life. And what's interesting to me about these is that the florals actually exist in the real world, but the stems are made up. Sophia Crespo uses AI to imagine extinct flowers from the Swiss Alps. These are speculative blooms dreamed by a machine in response to climate loss. They can lead us to ask, what if we trained AI not just to create, but to grieve what's lost and what could have been? Leonardo Solis builds flowers from memory and code that are on the edge of existence. This series uses a two-step algorithm that draws from particles and flow fields to create ghost-like fading blooms from invisible forms. They really look like they're just being blown away by the wind. In Delirium Blooms, flowers are machine hallucinations. The artist himself refers to these flowers, quote, not as placid representations of nature, but as artificial life forms from an era of machine hallucinations, information overflow, and a degrading environment. They are strangely distorted ideas of reality. So, why the Indianapolis Museum of Art? Believe it or not, we are kind of positioned to become a leader in media arts in the Midwest. We have 2 gallery spaces dedicated to digital art. Our Clues ceiling that you can see on the right, and then our Loom galleries on the other 2 images. So as I said, this is very much just the beginning of my exhibition proposal, but I really believe that these works sit at a powerful intersection of art history, innovation, beauty, grief, humanity, and machine, and they demonstrate that the floral still life continues to evolve.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Next, we have Levin Brinkman. The model is the medium.
Yeah, thanks. I think this will be a bit of a switch in gears after all these wonderful talks. I'm more coming from science. Please. So my name is Levin Brinkman. I'm in the lab of IATRA1, the Center of Humans and Machines. And today I want to talk about the model as a new form of medium. So my thinking is really grounded in culture evolution. So when I think about medium and art or culture in general, I mainly think about the information spread, now it's coming, the information transmitted between individuals or groups. And in this theme, we're also really much excited about information transmitted between humans and machines. So recently we published the perspective of machine culture, where we exactly investigate this transmission of information between humans and machines. Now, there's a lot of discussion, are machines like agents, innovators, are they just a tool? And we have actually done work on both of these perspectives. However, today I want to take another perspective. I want to take the perspective of AI as a medium, as a storage of information. So if we take that perspective and we think, for instance, of generative AI, like text-to-image AI, I really think about the transformation stored in this neural network which map between words and visual patterns. And I'm thinking about these statistical associations which are stored in this new form of medium. Now, I think this perspective becomes most clear maybe when we look at the technology Dream Booth, and maybe some have played around with it, but Dream Booth essentially is all this kind of stylistic imitation we see on the internet, where we can take a set of example images and then tune into our Stable Diffusion or other diffusion models a new visual concept, which might be just referenced as a new word. We did the same thing, applied it to the WikiArt, a huge data set of fine art, and we were not only able to create these images, but we also could analyze the vectors representing these styles. And what we found was that these vectors nicely chronologically organize themselves in this latent space in time. And that made us think, okay, maybe these vectors can not only represent individuals, but maybe they can also represent collectives. They can represent time. They can represent communities. So here you see some images representing now the art of different time periods in time. And this is not like, I think, a new idea. So here I also want to reference Nora Albardi, who is currently artist in residence in our lab. In 2020, she trained gun models on artworks from colonized artworks and show this kind of inverse appropriation, which is possible when using generative AI. So when we talk about generative AI as a medium, I think the content is not the artifact. It's not image, text, but it's rather pattern, style, or language. And it's not about an individual artifact, but rather it's about the body of work. It's about collective culture. Next, I want to also talk about the transmission aspect, which is very close to my heart. So is there actually something happening like a transmission of culture from the model to the human? And this work was kind of inspired by the realization in our lab. We have a lot of non-native speakers like myself. And we realized the more we use ChatGPT, the more we would change our language, the more we would use words we were not actually using before. So we were thinking, is this actually a global phenomenon? So what we did first, we need to establish, okay, does ChatGPT actually has a specific language? Does it speak different than humans? So what we did, we looked at a bunch of scientific abstracts at ChatGPT to rephrase these as abstracts, and what we found was that the languages used, the words it's used are very different than humans. And I mean, maybe most of you have heard about that most prominently. Delph is very much liked by ChatGPT, much more than actually humans use this word. So we were then curious, okay, do we actually see the same signal in human language? And this is from hundreds of thousands of YouTube videos where people present their work, and we found a marked increase in the use of Delph now here after the release of ChatGPT. And it's not only on YouTube. We also investigated podcasts. We've actually and there we really looked at podcasts where there were multiple speakers in a conversation. We found the same effect in business, in education, in spirituality, not so much in sport. And it's not only Delph. So we also investigated a bunch of other words. We found the same effect for comprehend, verbose, swift, intricate, discern. So a bunch of words which are overused by ChatGPT are also now more and more used by humans. Lastly, I would like to show a little bit of a more artistic world of our lab. And here it's really about like, it really makes me think about, is generative AI also an affective medium? Does it transmit emotions? This started with a kind of fun project on Halloween. We built the Spook the Machine experiment, a website where you can select different machines and you can then create images trying to spook the machine, and you will get some reaction. And what was really interesting to see is like what people, like we collected, I think around 20,000 images, was really interesting to see what kind of things people thought might actually spook the machine, right? So they make a lot of pop culture reference, obviously, but they also kind of reference to things that I think are really more invoking kind of emotions in humans. And interestingly, kind of the reactions from the machine was mirroring that. So when we asked like a model, we found that actually also AI was invoking the same emotions. This then led to this exhibition and on like an installation. And there it was really more about the personal stories people tell to a machine. And what I found here really most remarkable is then when I told the machine a story of my own childhood, being in this forest cabin of my dad and in isolation, I got this kind of reactions from the machine back, which were really mirroring my emotion in that moment, which really made me think about, okay, this machine may actually attune to me more than I was actually wanted to admit. So with this, if the model is the medium, what is the message? Well, it might be patterns rather than artifacts. It might be like a cultural power of homogenization, and it might be personalization of affective experience. But I think it's much more. So I think this is just the starting of this conversation. I'm curious, following up in the next days.
Thank you so much, Levin. And last we have Rebecca Xu, who will be presenting on preserving ambiguity and data-driven art.
Oh, okay, we already started. I'm Rebecca Xu, and today I'm gonna explore how ambiguity in perception, data, and art can enrich data-driven art and open up interpretation rather than closing that space. So Maurice Merleau-Ponty, a French philosopher, reminds us perception is always ambiguous. What we see isn't fixed, it's shaped by sensation, memory, and context. This ambiguity is not a flaw, but rather how we experience the world. So take Cézanne's painting, it resists the single meaning. The brushstroke simmer between representation and abstraction, allowing multiple readings. Each viewer sees anew. So ambiguity in data art, ambiguity preserves nuance. It avoids flattering complexity into singular truths. This doesn't obscure meaning. It invites deeper understanding, embracing uncertainty as a part of life. All right. Merleau-Ponty again, truth comes after meaning. Meaning is not handed to the audience. It emerges through their interaction. Ambiguity makes data art participatory and alive. So I'm going to talk about a few of my projects. And this one draws on legal data from across the US, not just numbers, but lived reality. Charts like this may be factual, but they often shut people out of a deeper meaning. So instead, we visualize the top 10 charges as patterns, open space for reflection and emotional connection. So this generative system is built in Python, structured in code, but open in outcome. Like Ponty's flash of the world, it reveals how law, culture, and perception intertwine, shaping what we come to see or name as crime. Male fraud, sexual exploration of minors, these are not just legal terms, they are stories of harm, power, and the system. Visualize them, ask us to confront, not just calculate. Okay. All right. Okay. Ambiguity is not vagueness. It's openness. Through aesthetics, we encourage curiosity and visual discovery. When meaning isn't immediate, viewers slow down and engage more deeply. Then I'm going to talk about our rationale is to translate numbers into meaningful visual patterns. This isn't a simplification, it's transformation. By using technical complexity behind the scene, we simplify the user experience, making the data more accessible and engaging. Have you ever wondered how your tax dollars are spent? We visualize this using pattern-based compositions that reveal both scale and complexity. Each number becomes a 3D visual form, linking data like federal spending to real-world impact. And these shapes aren't literal, but they are legible. Designed with rhythm, balance, and contrast, they help viewers intuitively feel the information. Carefully chosen patterns and colors support how people naturally perceive and understand data. By embracing ambiguity and translating numbers into patterns, our project invites the audience to explore data in new ways. The goal isn't just to inform, but to encourage curiosity, discovery, and deeper engagement with the story behind the numbers. So now, let's talk about generative AI. Generative AI struggles with ambiguity. Models are built to reward clear, decisive answers, so anything uncertain gets filled out, like this skip button does here. This binary approach misses the subtlety of human perception and often transforms abstract prompts into recognizable form. This bias leads to AI to find figures where none exist, turning abstract prompts into familiar objects, even when we ask for pure ambiguity. Okay, generative model fill in the gap, replace true openness with unintended clarity. At its core, AI maps language token to image in its training data because most image text pairing lack explicit labels for abstraction and ambiguity. These high-level concepts are underrepresented. So the model simply can't generate what it hasn't learned to see. We are experimenting with abstract net, a data set of ambiguous and abstract art to train AI to create images that resist easy labeling and invite open-ended engagement. Just as the ImageNet enable the AI to generate a photorealistic image. So this type of functional data set have shaped what AI can perceive and generate to bring ambiguity and abstraction into AI's visual vocabulary. We need data sets such as this one. Ambiguity isn't a weakness, it's a form of truth. It's how truth emerges, slowly, layered, uncertain. In data art, ambiguity gives us room to feel, to question, to imagine. Let's preserve it, not erase it. To know ourselves is to embrace ambiguity because we are never final, always becoming, always in relation to the world. Data art, too, should honor that uncertainty. Ambiguity is the space where empathy and truth becomes possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was provocative and terrific. And thanks to all of you for sitting here and bringing us your attention. And we look forward to questions.